we're now going to create a nice glass text effect. What you want to do is just start with the background here. I've got an assets folder called glass.jpg, or you could create your own. I've just used this as just something that can show a little bit of contrast. So basically what we want to do is just grab our type tool, and we could use the Arial black, that'll be fine. Color doesn't really matter, but in this case let's just let's choose a nice blue color, and we're just going to click and type the word glass. And you'll see soon what I mean about the color not really mattering. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start there with the glass layer, and we're just going to convert this now from type into pixels by right clicking and then choosing rasterize type. And there we go, we've now got pixels, so we can do whatever we want. It's not really important actually to do that for this particular effect, but just for the sake of example, let's do that. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to convert this into a nice glassy effect. So we need to use the layer styles for this. So we're going to go down to the little F at the bottom of the layers palette, and then we're going to choose our first option, which is bevel and emboss. Then that's going to pop up, and we're just going to increase our depth just to give us a nice sharp definition there. We can increase the size here just by simply grabbing it. I actually like it about there. I don't like to make these too big. It tends to look pretty tacky if we make the size too big. As you can see there, I see way too much of that, and it just doesn't quite do it for me. So let's use our type like that. And now we want to add a little bit of shine to here, so we can change the gloss contour. Let's try the double ring option, and notice we have a much more glossy kind of an appearance, or we could choose the one next to it. That also gives us a nice glossy appearance. And it doesn't really matter because we can always go back and change these later. And just clicking through we can experiment, but let's go with this double ring option. And now what we're starting to do here, as you can see, we're starting to get our metallic-y effect, but we want to make it glass, we want to make it clear. So what we're going to do, there's two different places we could do this. We could do it, we're going to choose the blending options at the top there by clicking. And you'll notice here in the layers palette there's two opacities. There's a master opacity and a fill opacity. What we'd actually be doing is we'd actually just be dragging the fill opacity down. We could do that in the layers palette, or we could do it here. It's exactly the same. We have the fill opacity here. And by reducing the fill opacity, what it does, as you can see, is it hides our actual pixels and only shows the layer style. So we've dragged it all the way down. Let's go back to our bevel and emboss. It's very dark because of our angle here. So what we want to do is just click and drag, experiment with our angle, and you can see as we take it more to the left we get a clearer look. Bring it more towards the middle, and the light would actually be shining directly down. And we're starting to see now that this glass effect there is coming directly down. What we want to do though is maybe give it a little bit of color. So we can choose our color overlay. Let's choose our blue. Let's choose a nice bright blue. That's actually a pretty good color. And notice it's solid again. So what we do is just reduce the opacity down. And by reducing the opacity down, we're just giving it a little bit of color there just to show that we do have some glass. Now currently it looks like it's stuck on the background. What we need to do is just make it pop off the background. And to do that we're going to choose a drop shadow. So when we click on the drop shadow we get the standard black, which we don't want. Because we're looking at glass. When it shines through a transparent object, we're not getting black, rather we're getting the color that's in the actual glass itself, which is a blue. So we're going to change it from a black to a blue. Let's choose a nice dark blue. Just looking in here in the preview, and we're looking for one that looks more realistic. We don't want that bright blue there. It looks a little tacky and unrealistic. So that's actually looking pretty good. Maybe you want to increase the opacity a little bit. And we can increase the size too. That softens it, or if we decrease it, it reduces that effect. So we'll click OK to apply it. And now basically we've got a glassy effect here. Now watch what happens when I click and I drag this around. Notice that wherever I drag it, the transparency shows the background through it nice and clearly. What we could do to accentuate this a little bit would be to change the hue of the background. Let's click on the background there, and then we're just going to choose image adjustments, and we could choose the hue saturation option. And now by just changing the hue here to something else, you can begin to see how that glass just shows through no matter what color we've got there. I kind of like that color. Let's click OK. And you can see that the glass, we just need to select the right layer there and just move it down. You can see how it's showing through. Now we could make modifications just by double clicking, and then we could change the color overlay. We could change the color of that or change the blending mode to something like screen. In fact, the screen probably looks a little better. And we could also go to our bevel emboss. We could play around with our angles once again. Another way we could adjust the angles is just to click on the drop shadow option. We just click and drag, and notice as we click and drag, it changes our angle of the top as well. Doesn't change the depth though. If we go back to bevel and emboss, this merely changes the angle, which is the top one here. This one is the depth, so we want to actually just play around with that until we get something that we're happy with. I actually kind of like it there. 98 and 53 is looking really good. Maybe we want to change our drop shadow again. We'll drop the intensity of it a little bit. There we go, because it's looking a little strong. So there we go. There's our basic glass effect. Now I want to show you how flexible these layer styles are. We're going to create a new layer, and then we're just going to grab a shape. Let's grab our custom shape tool here just by clicking and dragging on the rectangle, and we could choose custom shape from the toolbox there, or we could just go onto the top here on the options bar and click on the custom shape. And now that activates these shapes. Let's click on the drop down, and you'll notice there's a bunch of shapes here that ship with Photoshop by default. You could use these, or you can import more. We're just going to click on this shape here. And now there's three options. We can bring it in as a shape layer, we can bring it in as paths, or as pixels. I'm going to choose pixels for now. And then I'm just going to click, holding down the shift key, I'm just going to drag that out, and then we've made our shape. We could take our shape and drag it behind our glass layer. Now what if we want to make this shape out of glass as well? It's very, very easy to do. All we need to do, let me just center it over the A first. All we need to do is just click this little twirl down button, and we see the effects. Now we want to copy these effects to the new layer. In versions of Photoshop previous to CS2, we could just click and drag the effect into the layer and it would work. But now in CS2 we want to hold down the Alt key on Windows or the Option on Mac, and you'll see the double-sided arrow as we click from effects and then drop them and release. And now you can see that layer style has been applied. Of course, you see here the fill opacity is 0. On this one it's still 100, so we're just going to click and drag the fill opacity down. We don't have to go all the way to 0 if we don't want. We could leave a little bit of color in the glass. Same we could on the glass layer. We could increase the fill opacity a little bit too to allow a little more color to show through. And you see how easily we can just move that around, and now we could just reposition this wherever we felt we wanted to. We could drop this object in the bottom here and take the type and drop it there, or we could drop it on top of each other. So basically that's how we work and we create glass inside of Photoshop.